In the fight against climate change, so much of our discussion has been focused on mitigation. How do we stop the drivers of a changing climate? Unfortunately, in the world that I work in, one that contends with things like disasters on our coastlines and floods, wildfires, and other phenomenon, we had been increasingly worried about what it means to already deal with the consequences of a changing climate today. And now we can see that the climate has changed to the point that it no longer can be ignored. A dual commitment to both mitigation as well as present-day adaptation is going to be critical to survive what will be a transition on both fronts. Transitions away from fossil fuels and the transitions into living in a more climate-demanding reality.
Adaptation in the context of groundwater means fundamentally rethinking how we share water resources across communities, locally, across countries, international boundaries, and across the world. Many of the legal frameworks that exist, that govern this, the policies that were designed, arose during a time when they wanted to incentivize people to move to certain areas. Now we have large populations drawing on a limited resource, and we need to fundamentally rethink how those resources are shared.
I'm a civil engineer and an environmental sociologist, and so I think a lot about what people need as we go through this transition. One of the critical things under adaptation is safe housing. Having housing that is really up to par for what we need under the climate challenge and is able to keep people warm in the winter and cool in the summer is a really critical infrastructural choice that we can make now and is something that we can enact all over the world.
Indigenous peoples and local communities control or govern about a third of the world's forests. To effectively govern and manage those lands require resources. However, our research shows that these resources to date are woefully inadequate. Such land will be critical to address climate change, as well as help marginalized and vulnerable communities to adapt to its worst effects.
Because we have different regions and countries, we have to have the sensibility to find the solution which is the best and the most suitable to that cultural context. This is really related to the concept in my field, which is called embodied carbon, meaning we need to think about building for long term so that we don't need to demolish and rebuild in 20 or 30 years.
In terms of climate change, food security, and agriculture, success means that we address climate change while maintaining the livelihoods and well-being of farmers around the world. This means governments taking a lead role, but also the private sector and the civil society responding to the issues of climate change. It means using innovations that can address climate change and get us out of the dilemma of ensuring that we are able to produce enough food in the world while figuring out the well-being of farmers.